Hello, Australian fundraisers, and greetings from wet and cold London. Uh, Sean has asked me to say a few words about the current crisis that's affecting fundraising in Britain, and particularly to try and give Australian fundraisers a few heads up so that you don't get caught on the back foot like we have been. And I have to say, the last couple of years for UK fundraisers have been quite unlike anything I have ever seen. And I've been in fundraising for 40 years, and it's most uncomfortable because the spotlight has been on fundraising and not in a very nice way. So it would be very good if we can learn some lessons from this to apply to the Australian context. And the first thing I would say is, of course, regulation is a fairly dull subject for most people, and you fairly quickly lose the will to live if you want to go into it in too much detail. But the fact is that because of shortcomings in fundraising, perceived shortcomings, very adverse public publicity, and people now have been casting a critical eye on British fundraising, and we have been found to be wanting. And so that's kind of opened the floodgates, and now it seems to be all right to criticise charities and fundraising in a way that perhaps people didn't like to do before. But maybe there's a few good things that can come out of this. So the first thing is we have been told to get our house in order, and lots of people like to think that we are still self-regulating. Of course, it would have been great if we could have been self-regulating, but in the UK, self-regulation did not work, and now we have people outside who are telling us what we have to do, and that means that everything is going to change. So Sean asked me to put together a few pieces of practical advice, and the first thing that I would say is that you need to scrutinise your fundraising practices very thoroughly now, and make sure that integrity, and I mean visible integrity, is at the heart of everything that you do that affects and touches the public in any way. That integrity, in all the areas that have been criticised in the UK, it's the absence of integrity that has caused us most of the problem. If you don't already have a promise to donors in terms of how you will treat them, then I think you should. And to be honest now, we are paying a very heavy price in fundraising income from not having invested properly in looking after our donors, and particularly in providing an attractive customer experience. The donor experience has become centre stage for UK fundraisers now. So I'm just checking here my checklist, so bear with me a little bit. You need to be thinking about things like being great to do business with, and also feedback to donors in terms of the difference that their gift has been making. I use a phrase, the 5 Ps, which is that you need to be famous for frequent, fast, fabulous feedback. And I think we as a sector have let ourselves down in that regard. We are not particularly noted for frequent, fast, fabulous feedback, and we need to be famous for it, so that people will know what to expect and will feel good about the difference that they make. So the next thing I would like to suggest is that fundraisers have to give their donors practical choices in terms of how they are communicated with. Now, this is a very big and complex subject, and I would recommend you to read a blog. It's free, a blog that I wrote on the subject. You'll find it on my website, www.kenburnett.com, and it's called Continuous Donor Choice, and it's about consistently, clearly giving donors the chance to control their relationship, to put the donor in the driver's seat, if you like. I think we do need to put donors at the heart of fundraising. The mantra that the Commission on the Donor Experience, which we've set up in the UK, its mantra is putting the donor at the heart of fundraising rather than fundraising targets. And we believe that if you put the donor at the heart, then you will reach those fundraising targets. But donors have been feeling that they've been just treated like fodder for a marketing machine, and they don't like that, and they are saying so very loudly at the moment. It's going to get harder to ask for money. The other area, of course, that you need to pay great attention to is data and how you use data and your responsible policies relating to the use of data. And for that, again, you need to really do your homework to make sure that you're using data in the right way. So in addition to putting donors at the heart of fundraising, I think we need to practice inspiring rather than repeated high pressure asking. We need to make sure that we're in the inspiration business. And that means getting much better at telling our stories with power and passion that will move people to action. The final piece of advice I would give is to, and this you may detect a tinge of self-interest here, is to reread Relationship Fundraising and George Smith's Asking Properly, because really all the clues to what fundraising should be are in there. And the fact is, we've, as a sector, talked the talk about being donor-focused and having a donor-based approach, but we have so often fallen short of that. And so you do need to put your fundraising under a microscope and make sure that you can comfortably and easily defend anything that you do, but also, more importantly, perhaps, that you don't really need to defend what you do. Sean asked me, has Australian fundraising peaked? I think you've had very good results over the last decade, as can be seen from the benchmarking exercise. But I don't know the answer to the question of whether Australian fundraising has peaked, but I do know that we are all very dependent on regular donors, and the economic model of regular donors depends upon direct debit, the fact that people continue to pay, that each year we only lose and therefore have to replace a small part of that file. Now, if that number changes, the economics of direct fundraising, because costs of acquisition are going up all the time, of course, but if we suddenly found ourselves having to renew 40% of our regular donors rather than, say, 10 or 15%, that could be catastrophic for fundraising. So you must do everything that you possibly can to avoid going down the opt-in route, and make sure that you are practicing continuous donor choice, and so that opt-out is seen to be an acceptable approach. Opt-out, we know, continuous donor choice works for the donor, gives the donor all the control that he or she could want, but also doesn't damage fundraising, which opt-in certainly would. So I'm, after coming up to 25 years since I wrote Relationship Fundraising, I believe more than ever that the donor-based approach is right. I kind of wish I'd been a little bit more strident and a bit more pushy in promoting that, because I don't think that message yet has got through enough in the sector. But the simple fact is that if giving is a pleasure, donors will do more of it. And if it's not a pleasure, they'll fairly quickly stop. And so we need to make sure that the donor experience is a great one, so that giving is a pleasure, people will keep doing it, and they will tell their friends about the great difference that they make. So this is not rocket science, and I, as always, wish you, all of you in your great country, every single success in doing this. Thank you.